Well, hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. It's now getting close to midnight, isn't that right, Richard?
Oh yeah, we're getting on.
So we're not sharing a bed. That's my bed over there.
It's not that kind of party.
That's right. Well, I think we'll go into. I'm a bit tired now. So we'll go. I think I'll do the animal mutilations thing tomorrow because that's a big subject. But Grant Cameron was here, wasn't he? Now we've heard a lot about him from Stephen Bassett.
Yeah, Grant Cameron I found was very quite.
Was he like Stephen Bassett?
He was very like Stephen Bassett.
Do you think that Stephen Bassett reminds you of Clive Anderson? Does he remind you of Clive Anderson?
Now you've said that, yes.
He does, doesn't he? Stephen Bassett is just like Clive Anderson.
Whose line is it anyway? Stephen Bassett.
It's the way he talks so fast, that high dome forehead, and it's. But he's he goes. Anyway, Grant Cameron is a friend of Stephen Bassett's and has collaborated with Stephen Bassett on a lot of research, including the various petitions and the famous the Ramey letter, which has been decoded.
One of the main cruxes of his story, he talked about four highly influential people in the history of not so much ufology, but in the history of kind of the US government, and maybe so much as he didn't mention the shadow government, which I know probably a lot of your viewers actually believe in a shadow government. But the four influential people he mentioned was Wilbur B. Smith, who wrote a book called The New Science.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. Andrew Johnson has spoken about Wilbur Smith.
Yeah, I didn't know I didn't know anything about Wilbur Smith or his book till I heard Grant Cameron speak about him. The other person he mentioned was Dr. Eric Walker, which again I haven't heard anything about. Eric Walker, and the next person he spoke about was a person called General Wesley Clark, who was a 4-star general with the US military, and seen as he was what Grant Cameron said was that to know anything in the US military you had to at least be a 4-star general, so you can imagine this guy knew some stuff. And the last person he mentioned was somebody very close to who you're looking at here is Ben Rich. But not me, but
Ben and Rich.
Ben Rich from Lockheed Skunk Works. Yeah. And Ben Rich said some incredible things. He was doing a lecture at UCLA in 1993, not long before he died. He said, "Gentlemen, we have the technology to take ET home." And he said all these crazy things, and people followed him out the room saying, wait there, what were you talking about? Now, Grant Cameron's talk today was about mathematics and consciousness, and what Ben Rich turned around and said to these people was, do you guys know how ESP works? Well, you don't know how UFOs work.
Yeah.
There's something to that effect.
Well, that's an interesting statement to make, isn't it? I mean, that's, again, we're linking the kind of spiritual stuff with UFOs, which is incredibly interesting.
Well, what he says, Ben Rich said, all points in space and time are connected, and that's how UFOs work. All points in space and time are connected.
That's an interesting thing to say. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, I interviewed Stephen Mera just before he's heard Grant Cameron, and he said something very similar, which is very interesting, which, I mean, you can listen to what he said yourselves, HPANWO TV viewers, and decide what you think. But now my own take on Grant Cameron was, well, I mean, I'd heard of him, obviously. He's a Canadian guy. Now, I had to miss the first sort of 20 minutes of his speech, so I had to go out and film that 7:43 thing, which you've just seen, where nothing happened. Superficially everything is normal, except England has won a few. Team GB has won a few more goals in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think won 13 gold medals.
Yeah. So maybe that was what the crop circle specified. I don't know, but anyway, he talks about things such as the fact that he talks about the rotating disc. Now, he found out that by rotating a disc at a certain speed,
a rotating magnetic field,
you could actually reduce the gravitational pull on a certain area. Now, this is not unknown to me because Tampere University in Finland actually managed to do this in the 1980s. They managed to.
Is that something Rowney Kilder was talking about?
Yeah. Also, the Owless people talk about that. The Mary Bennett and David Percy, who write the books about the moon landings and things like that. Okay. 2/3 and. But I mean, there's So I mean, he came out with some very, very interesting things, but I didn't gel with everything he said. For instance, he said there was a timeline in terms of disclosure, and he says the UFOs were doing things. The ETs were all collaborating. They were all working together. They were presenting things to humanity in a certain order. After Roswell in 1947, there was no ET contact at all until 1952, right? And then he said things like, and there was no abductions until 1960 with the Hills case, right? And then there were no crop circles until 1976. Then after 1980 something, there were no CE2s with marks on the ground. That's bollocks.
Yeah.
This is so many exceptions. It's unbelievable. I mean, a
lot of things had happened before and
before even that happened. But also, I mean, there were cases of people. There's cases I know that a lady whose father was abducted between 1947 and 1952. And I mean, I remember specifically saying the date was sort of like the late 19th. I mean, Timothy Good has written about someone who was abducted in 1949.
I remember a story in a UFO book I read. Now I can't remember the exact details of how it went, but a nun in I've forgotten what country she was in, but she got abducted by a UFO, but she wasn't so much abducted as she was contacted. Yeah. And the guys let fly in the UFO basically, and she went to the new country, like North America, and she ran into a group of Indians, and she got an artifact off them, like a pot or something like that. I can't remember the exact story and the details, but she flew back and everything like that, and she told the story to her elders and everything like that, and who spurned her and said she was absolutely crazy, and she got committed or something like that. They accused her of being mental or something like that. Anyway, about a year later, they sent priests to the Newfoundland to convert people to Catholicism or Christianity to that effect, and they said it was a pointless exercise because they'd been converted already by this nun who visited them.
Oh, there you are.
And so definitely abductions or contacts happened before the dates he gave.
And people will say things like, well, there were no UFO reports at all before in the 1940s, right? Until sci-fi movies became popular in the cinema, there were no UFOs at all. Well, this is crap. I mean, the thing was, what these people don't understand is that people use different language in those days. Terms like UFOs and flying saucers were only coined in the 1940s and 50s. It was I think it was Kehoe. Was it Key? It was Kehoe kind of flying saucers.
No, it was what's it called? They seemed like skipping across.
Yeah, what's his name?
Arnold.
Okay, yeah.
Kenneth
Arnold. Yeah,
Arnold.
And then it was I think it was the Condon. It was Edward Condon who coined the phrase UFOs. Or was it Ruppelt? Was it?
I'm not sure who coined the phrase UFOs.
Was it Greg
flying
Ruppelt?
saucers definitely came from.
But they were definitely post 1940s.
Came from Arnold. Yeah.
Now before that, they were called things like Foo Fighters, and we had and the thing is airships. People. There was a massive UFO flap in the turn of the 19th century. A few years before the turn of the 19th century, the 20th century, there was a huge UFO flap between. And it culminated with the Aurora incident in 1898, and people used the word airship. But you read through the newspaper reports of that time, replace the word airship with UFO, and it's obvious they're talking about a UFO flap. Yeah, they just use different language.
And not to mention that there's a painting from I think it's Munich in Germany where they say in the 15th century these light balls and dark balls that shoot fire at each other. And there's actually a famous painting of it. Not to mention the famous painting from Yugoslavia with I think you see Jesus sitting in this star, like semi-ball, semi-star at the back, and he's sitting there at some kind of control. There's another famous painting, very famous painting, and it's got a picture of a UFO shining a light down on, I think it's baby Jesus' crib.
Shining, that'd be like.
And there's a lot of famous ancient artwork.
To be honest, I mean, there's a 30,000-year-old cave painting from South Africa that shows human figures running away from what looks like a saucer-shaped UFO
Yeah,
hanging in the sky.
I mean, what we're just talking about, it's a whole subject in itself.
Yeah.
It really is.
But basically, and the abduction, right? People say the abduction started with Betty and Barney Hill. No, it didn't. That was the first. Betty and Barney Hill were the first one that was publicised in the mainstream media.
Yeah, and we talked about earlier the fact that why they were probably so publicised and so focused on was it was a white woman dating a black man, which was very taboo at the time.
Yeah.
Even though it's, I mean, racism to me, it's so last century. You know, we should have way grown past that. But at the time, Betty and Barney Hill was a bit of a taboo anyway, because it was a black man and a white woman. But a black man and a white woman saying they'd been abducted by aliens. That's sensationalism. That's something.
Well,
that's something the papers actually want to print.
It was kind of politically correct because the civil rights movement had got going. You know, very noble cause. I don't deny. You know, but I mean, there may have been an element of that. But the truth of the matter is, people were abducted not only decades but centuries and millennia before the Hills. I mean, they used to call it other things. They used to call it being spirited away by the fairies or taken by the goblins. But you read the descriptions, and they're identical. They're identical to abduction.
Yes, but God helped the person who came forward with a story like that in the 16th, 17th century.
He'll be burned as a witch.
He's a witch.
Burn them at the stake. Yeah.
But I think it's appropriate to zoom in on your T-shirt this time, because what Grant Cameron's going to talk about tomorrow is the CIA and the CIA UFO link. And one word he used, which I don't know if any of your viewers are familiar with, is the word phenomenology.
Oh yeah, I've heard that word because apparently it simply means the study of strange phenomena.
It's the word the CIA use for everything that encompasses UFOs, remote viewing, alien life. Anything above black,
blimey, I didn't know
if
that.
If you like, was termed by the CIA as phenomenology, and he spoke about a guy who's came out recently. Now, what's his name again?
The CIO, what's his name?
New guy came out. Chase Brandon.
Chase Brandon, that's him. Yeah.
Brandon, and he says Chase Brandon was just in this CIA store, and he's like, "Wow, a box from Roswell. Wow, I found all this stuff from Roswell." And he's just came out without the CIA's permission, saying, "Well, I found all this stuff about Roswell, and it's real, folks." But what Grant Cameron's saying is, he used the word phenomenology, which is a very specific CIA word.
Yeah.
So he's coming out saying, "Wow, I've just found this box." What Grant Cameron's saying, it's a load of BS, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the phrase phenomenology. It means the word phenomenology means the study of new scientific evidence. That's all it means.
Yeah.
Phenomenon means new thing. Yeah.
Well, the science of spirituality, I think, is going to be the science that defines the 21st century.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, the CIA use these things as code words, like they use phrases like fast walkers and UAV and things like that as well. But I mean, basically, I think that Cameron, some of the things he said were interesting, but other things, I don't think he quite understands the situation.
I found him like Steve Bassett. I found him very inspirational to the Exopolitics movement. Just to listen to him, to watch him speak, he was very. I found him very easy to follow, even though he spoke very, very fast. I found him very easy to follow, and I found him very inspirational because, as he spoke, you could hear the passion in his voice. He's got passion for the subject. You know, he knows it's ETs. He came on stage and he said it. He goes, "I know it's not a theory. It's not a philosophy. It's ETs."
Yeah, I did find it when he started talking about how the president. I mean, this stuff about Stephen Bassett talks about this too. He goes, "There's no such thing as a world government. There's no such thing. It's no such thing as an Illuminati. Okay, for the love of God, hack my phone." Yeah. I mean, Grant Cameron said was a bit similar. He started saying how, the president is on top of it. The president is briefed in. The president is the mastermind behind everything. Well, I mean, where was he during the Bush administration? To talk about masterminds.
Oh God.
I mean, this is palpable nonsense. That there is a secret cabal above that. They call them a breakaway civilization. They call them the truth embargo people. I call them Illuminati. It doesn't matter who they are. I mean, you know, it's what they do that counts. Now, I think this is palpably. This is definitely nonsense. I think Cameron is wrong here.
I think it's a bit wide of the mark, you know. Yeah. But everyone's entitled to their opinion, even Nick Pope.
Oh yeah, Nick Pope. Yeah, Nick Pope is now. I mentioned this in my Olympic video, but he's just written an article. It seems to be a piece of viral marketing for a computer game.
Computer game, yeah. And Nick seems to have burnt all these bridges with Exopolitics, so I don't think we're going to see him at an Exopolitics conference again.
Oh no, well he was always
Ever.
yeah. I mean, we were joking, you know, you can't have a UFO conference without Nick Pope, but I don't think he's gonna. Yeah.
Now, this is the second
Well,
one.
I don't think you're going to be able to have one
2
with him
months
now.
so
I mean,
far, yeah.
even I mean, he was always a very controversial figure in the Exopolitics conference community. But I mean, I don't think he's going to be accepted. I think he's now going to be rejected. Even his, you know, people who were quite sympathetic to him, like Richard Dolan, are now, you know, thinking he's discredited himself for this.
What's he doing saying this nonsense? Anyway, to finish with, Grant Cameron talked about a fella I think you're probably all familiar with, Stan Romanek. And Stan Romanek's,
he's written a book.
Stan Romanek's equations, which tied into the other part of his talk, which was obviously about consciousness and mathematics. Stan Romanek, who is apparently got learning disabilities, his wife sat up one in the middle of the night and she's like, "Who the bloody hell you talking to, Stan?" And he's writing down all these equations, which matched up with another fella's equations,
Hal
Puthoff, who he says these are my equations for the polarizations for the vacuum approach to general relativity. Now, that's
He's obviously some sort of savant, isn't he?
way beyond me, but
He's obviously, but
apparently these equations are way beyond the time.
oh, but yeah, I think. Family Guy's on, so
Yeah.
it's on. So we'll leave it there. But I was going to say that he's obviously some kind of savant, and this I think ties in with what Mary Rodwell discovered with the Star Children, the Indigo Children.
But yeah, there's going to be more on Grant Cameron tomorrow.
Yeah, well we'll pick it up then, shall we?
Yeah.
Well, good night, HPANWO TV viewers. I'm going to go to bed. Well, I think we'll get. Should we set it on for 8?
8
o'clock, because we're not starting until 10. All right then. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.